Before we launch into our episode today, folks, 2 quick housekeeping items. We're going to be rolling out some changes this season. The first is that we're including more discussions about human relationships in general, not just the romantic kind. And second, we're focusing much more on funding the show through listener support this year. So if you like what you hear today, please subscribe on our website, together.show, in any amount that you can afford. Subscribers will have access to bonus content, unedited interviews, early access to some of our episodes, and a community of other listeners. You can find subscription and donation links on our show notes and on our website. So thanks for your support. Now on to the show.
When I saw this bud of life, this bud of happiness jumping next to me with his eyes riveted upwardly to look at me and go, what? I was like, are you kidding me? Are you doing this too?
I'm Eric Newton, and this is Together, the podcast where we explore the truth about human relationships. As a divorce lawyer, I saw thousands of couples break up firsthand. These days, I'm not so interested in breaking couples up, nor in keeping them together. I'm interested in what our relationships can teach us about ourselves and the world that we live in. So on this show, we have honest conversations with real people about real relationships. The deeper I go down the rabbit hole of asking what love is and what's true and what our relationships are really all about, the weirder it all becomes. One implication of asking these questions for long enough is that the idea of meaning itself begins to have less hold. It's clear that meaning is fluid and that we each create meaning from moment to moment, yet that we live by it as if it's the foundational, objective truth. On the other hand, that realization isn't entirely useful because it's not as if the process can ever stop. It's not as if seeing this truth has a step outside of constantly fabricating our meaning. So long as we're alive, we're on the meaning train. The best that we can do is not take it so very seriously and enjoy the ride. Sometimes the meaning train dips into a sad valley, as my fiance likes to call it, and we can all become a bit nihilistic. And that is where narrative comes in. Narrative, story, is the means by which we all understand the facts of our experience in an ongoing sequence. Story isn't good or bad, it's just how we know what's what. It's how we plan for the future by learning from the past. Story is how we see the world, whether it's our tragedies or our triumphs, it's all the story. And so too with our love lives. Arguably, the most important skill in any relationship is accepting and harnessing this truth. Everything that you know about yourself and your partners and how you all came together and whether or not you're in love is held in the container of your story. To get control of your relationship, you've got to get control of your narrative. Your story isn't true, but it's utterly inescapable. Quit one story and it is quickly replaced by another. We're stuck with story, but knowing that is access to controlling it. All of which brings us to our guests today, Rasmus and Michel. 2 men, both with long-term committed girlfriends at the time that they met, neither having ever considered a relationship with a man, and they find each other on a dance floor in the middle of the desert. Now, I'll let them tell the story. It's a good one. But what's fascinating here isn't just the story itself, but how these 2 use narrative in general. They're masters of it. So as you're listening to this one, listen with 2 ears. With one, enjoy the show. There are lots of layers here about sexual identity and meaning and self. With the other ear, note how these 2 are able to weave narrative into their lives. As told by them, their relationship has a mythical quality to it. It infuses everyone around them. It's intoxicating. Now, you may be moved by their story, or you may be repelled by their story. But either way, I guarantee you'll have feelings about it. And that's the point. These 2 are telling themselves and everyone around them a story about the world. And it's the story that gives character to the truth. We're all going to die. Why not be mythical in the meantime? So to set the stage, Rasmus is on a quest.
I'm just gonna tell you this because for me it was definitely not at all anything I foresaw. I mean, I had a girlfriend at the time, separation from my wife, and I'd for years had this feeling of not really being met in my community. I mean, lovely people in my community and great friends, but always feeling like, okay, so I exist and I'm sort of a little crazy, or sane, as I like to call it. There got to be somebody else like me. If we're 6 billion people on Earth, there got to be somebody that is just that much closer to who I am. Yeah. So I got this idea in my head that I want to find myself in somebody else, and this is going to be amazing. Just think about the combustion that can happen if you're that with the idea of, I mean, a lot of people have the idea of being their best, being in expansion and being in their heart and compassion and love towards, everything in life, and being this lubricant to let life just grow and do its thing. That's ultimately what I wanted. But the idea for 4 years before Burning Man more and more crystallized into, how can I find myself? I mean, not identical. I wasn't expecting my twin, just on an energetic level and mindset feeling. I wanted to bring myself to that energy that I was so feeling, like really giving, loving, building, and I met it in different ways all the time in life, and I was just feeling like I want to find myself, my match in that regard.
In romance?
No, it didn't have. I didn't associate it to romance at all. Actually, I associated it to fertile soil of like growing. So it wasn't necessarily in terms of romance, although I didn't format it and limit it to not include romance. Okay. It was not that concrete in that way. It was just the idea of shooting up. If I'm a tree with legs, let's walk to the sunniest position I can possibly find with good water and soil, and let's root there. And the forest around me, I'm sure it's already magnificent. So I was looking for that.
So Rasmus was on a quest to find his match, his support, the person who could meet him where he was. He had heard about Burning Man, and he reasoned that the highest ratio of people like this would probably be there. And he had heard that at Burning Man, the place to be was called Camp Mystic, and that at Camp Mystic, the distillation of the entire thing was the White Party. So after immense preparation to get himself halfway across the world to a party out in the middle of the Nevada desert, Rasmus was standing on a balcony overlooking the dance floor of the White Party.
Finally, I saw this guy entering, this man who's sitting here next to us. And okay, just to give you a snapshot, I mean, I love Burning Man. Radical self-expression is one of the 10 tenets, but there's definitely a Burning Man fashion that goes around. Fashion, pheasant feathers and brown tan leather details and sprayed on makeup, like very perfect. And I'm sorry, like my association with West Coast conscious culture, sort of, I'm not going to go into that, but beautiful seeing some people in like absolutely unabashed, like unfiltered expression. Michel comes in and he's in a black overall with white stitch details that is layered with a white leather loose hanging harness vest, and he has translucent like scales on his like wings, small little wings on his shoulders that are like lit with LEDs below, and has this crazy leather like I wouldn't say army hat, but this sort of with a cap and then sticking up with little cutouts of mesh that you can look through, so you can kind of see through, and he's coming in on the dance floor and like posing this contrast. I immediately notice him when he comes on like into this place. And just to give you a snapshot, Camp Mystic does a great job building a stage and have great performances and things. And so he's part of the camp, comes from the back, and I immediately notice him, and he starts dancing after a while, and I just keep going back to looking, and just like such a contrast. And creating, one thing I really noticed is I created this vibe around him of, he's a great dancer. I mean, professional flamenco, tango dancer, really good body coordination, and that sort of unfiltered, just spontaneous, loving way of expressing himself without those layers of self-consciousness. But what he was doing also was making himself ridiculous in ways, dancing, just to create space and allowance and bring people in around him. So it's like this entire area around him, I'm getting goosebumps, around him, where the energy was just up. So I'm like, oh, not necessarily thinking so much. Eventually I'm just shake myself out of it, tell my friends, I'll see you later, I'm gonna be over there dancing with this guy. I didn't, at that moment, I wasn't even thinking about this mission that brought me there.
Yeah.
I was just in this space, and it was like gravity. It was really like, I was feeling, so you can call that sparks if you want.
Well, it's interesting because what's interesting about what you just said to me is that the space that you got in when you did become gravitated to Michel was kind of the essence of what you said you were looking for.
Yes.
But when you were looking
totally.
for it, you weren't being it. You were being totally self-conscious about the process.
Yes.
And then you saw him and let go of it.
Yes. Yeah.
It's lovely.
It's true.
So you ended up in the gravity well.
Yeah, and we barely spoke. Smart thing to do when there's loud music. And we just danced and like had a blast. And then I, back in my mission a little bit, at some point, I'm like, wow, Michel, I grab him and I really say, Michel, I didn't know his name. I was just saying, I need to keep you. How do I keep you? And he does this thing, like, little roll his eyes, Michel gives out 1,000 cards. It's Burning Man. It's 70,000 people. It's a party, oh yeah, here's my card. Sure, see you later.
Yeah.
And I like take his card, and I'm like not in that moment thinking so much about that. But 2 minutes passes by, and I'm like, that didn't taste right. I was like, okay, I don't think he get it. So I go back to him, and I'm like, take out my cell phone, and I show him, look, I'm taking a picture of your card. I'm like not losing you. Like this is happening. And we continue dancing. We go back and change and don't see each other until the morning after. We haven't slept. We're just dancing in sunrise at the same place. Happened to be again on the playa of all the million things you can do. So we see each other again and dance some more. Then I go home to my girlfriend in Montreal, my engineering studies. Have a pretty turbulent fall, and I've lost Michel's card. And after seeing him, a few days after seeing him, I had a wrestling match with a girlfriend and bent my phone. Literally bent my iPhone. And so that was that.
That was that.
Yes.
Then you gotta let it come and let it go.
Yeah. But I remembered I kept coming back to this because it was definitely the standout moment, standout person, standout energy of Burning Man, and I just kept like feeling it. Then I was in finals period, 2014, December 2014, and I'm procrastinating. I'm on my computer. I go on Facebook and I discover this tab that used to exist that says synced from your phone.
Lovely.
And I'm like, what? So apparently when I set up my phone, I'd activated this thing and never really bothered to actually look at it. And I started going through these photos, and there's these photos that I never saw. And One of them is of the card. So I'm like, takes me like a day or two, and I sit down and don't procrastinate anymore. I write this message, which is basically was a reflection. I didn't have any intentions or think I'd be sitting here right now. Let's just put it that way. I just wanted to really share my appreciation. And actually, I have it here. I can read it. So I'll read it word for word. I found you, God of gods. I thank you for being and inspiring. I know that you know what you do and how your sunshine warms people. As the sun, your light reflects back at you. This is me reflecting light and adding some of mine. The energy you carry allow people to feel good about themselves. You empower people around you. You're a big heart, and your heart shines through your eyes. I truly hope that you are surrounded by people who see you, who you can continuously discover your depth with, that holds space where there is nothing to prove, that enables you to keep growing to your potential as a human being and God. I'm sure you are and have been surrounded by gods and goddesses, as your world surely mirrors you and the energy you put forth. Your Swedish friend in Montreal.
That's beautiful.
So it's the first I meditated on, like just this meeting, and this is what I wrote. And Michel will tell you, he was at his dad's funeral receiving this, and replied pretty immediately. A week later, I was knocking at his door, and walk in here, and it's just what I could have imagined in energetically, like just meeting each other and being in the space of, wow, okay, I guess it was real. I guess it was definitely real, which was as gorgeous. And we spent time. I'd said, my mom being a massage therapist and loving dancing, that's how we met. I love to give things. I wasn't very financially wealthy at that point, although I felt like a king. But one thing that would be nice to give was massage. So I said, okay, let's meet up, let's dance, and I'll give you a massage. So that's pretty much what we did, danced and massaged. And at this point there was, at least on my half, I had never associated men with relationships. I'd say I'd not really had that many guy friends even, or thought of guys as nice people in general. That's changed for sure. But never had that idea. So in my world, seeing each other, it had nothing to do with romance or sensuality.
The story has an underlying element of sexuality to it, though. Was that just not conscious for you?
No, not at all. I think like mentally compartmentalized. So I'm basically a believer of social conditions a lot, and that you have possibilities of being in your heart and sensual with the world, men and tables and wine glasses. It's like if you open up your book and are restricted. So I was for sure very formatted.
Yeah.
Guys, I had a line just above the crotch, which was very clear in my mind. It's like not. Why would I question? I love women. I have women in my life. It's not. I don't. It didn't even exist. But you are right when you say underlying tone. I was not conscious of, for sure.
And had you? I mean, giving massage to another man is a really intimate thing in our culture. Had you ever done that before?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, my Swedish upbringing, I would say, being very liberal as well. It's very good to just be open, and you you can hug people. You hug people. We don't do the A-frame hug. We like actually give real hugs with each other, and you can be in your heart, but there's no confusion. I was very, very clear about this, and I never fantasized or held like desires that I didn't express. It just wasn't part of my reality.
Got it. Okay.
But I think you can be sexual with the world, and I think we are under the layers having sexual relationships with everything, because we are by nature sexual just because we exist because of it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yes.
Yeah.
So Michel, do you remember meeting him on the dance floor?
Not at all. Just kidding. I was dancing. Part of my life, or my devotion to one mission, is healing work, quote unquote, what I call contribution. And one of my best tools in contribution is actually dancing and making myself, I won't say ridiculous, what I should say is really expressed. In whatever form and, of course, shape that it would take, since it's dance. So I want to show rhythm. I do love dancing, and I have a bit of a training in dancing, in flamenco and tango, but these different forms really speak to the heart of people, and I have a vocabulary of movement, and I want to take the heart out of these people and show it, like really give it shine and spontaneity and inconsequentiality. And I'm just inconsequential. When I'm at dance floor, I'm like, here it is, and so be it. And it is so contagious, and this is what I'm counting on, as I'm just taking these hearts out. Oh, love it. Love this form of healing, because it's absolutely non-spoken. It's much more subconscious. It speaks intelligently to the psyche. So bottom line, I'm dancing, and I jumped on stage to even just grab even more of these people. And I remember dancing with 2 or 3 ladies who were like doing this flamenco stuff. They were just so happy, and I saw some shy ones, and I was like, I'm even more intrigued by the ones that are like a little bit shy. Oh, injections of self, And so when I saw this bud of life, this bud of happiness jumping next to me with his eyes riveted upwardly to look at me and go, what? And I'm looking down going, what? And I was like, are you kidding me? Are you doing this too? And it was just like, pew, pew, jumping, and his legs are horse legs. Like he just can spring off and do a salto and come down to his feet, and he's back below me looking at me like, yes.
Without even trying or thinking too hard about it, right?
Oh no, there was no thing. I was like in absolute pleasure. And I'm liking the fact that you are not shy to call it the undertone of sexuality, because it was this oozing pleasure, whatever you call it. And so I recognized him. I was like, you are, yes, this puzzle piece. And it was just an incredible moment. And I just let it be for what it is. And I see this man. Okay, so the dream moment is that this person doesn't want to lose me. But I guess my eyes were facetious, and I was like, yeah. I think I was more in disbelief than I was actually facetious. Like, 70,000 people want my card. There was certainly a little bit of that, but I wanted him to not lose me, because that is precious. We're 30 and change years apart. So to go to your question, and I'm sure you'll have, I had no idea that there would be anything of a couple nature in this. My girlfriend was dancing a little bit further down. I had my world of heterosexual relationships. And
it always had been this way for you?
I only had relationships with women. However, my best friend fell in love with me when I was 23. It led to a real love interaction So I realized that pleasure exists from a man, and that at least opened beautiful gates for me. Initially, it was very uncomfortable, but it opened gates later on, and I realized I was actually proud to have made the step of receiving pleasure from a man. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I could have been judging and stuff that, anyway. But it never ever hit me that I could have a relationship, quote unquote, with a man. So there was not even a thought when Rasmus, or this bud, this call it the springing joy next to me, this well of smile and recognition was next to me. I was like, oh, great, somebody having fun next to me. And that was that for me. But then, fast forward, since you know what happened, I welcome him to my house, and this is now just before Christmas holidays, and he's on his way to Sweden, passing by New York. And I'm opening the door, and I'm in my month of grieving. And
For your father,
yeah,
of
and
course.
so in that month of grieving, in this tradition, you let your hair grow, your facial hair, your skull, and I'm bald. I mean, I shaved my hair, so these stubs of hair sticking out of my skull. I didn't even feel that I should have a consciousness about my physique at all. I just was completely outwardly looking. You know, I was in my hole looking out, and this man enters on this beam of light. I remember truthfully opening the door and just seeing this. Now I know that I was right to recognize him, and now that I know that his invitation to see each other is special, because this is really intense. I saw loving energy at that moment, not coupleship, not sexuality, but love, yes? So we entered, I had prepared dinner, and he sits, and I ask him 2 questions, and he stops, he just looks at me, and I said, no, this is it. This is the place. Because his questions were like, am I really dreaming? Am I here? What are you saying? Are you speaking to the inside of me, or you're addressing to my psyche? I saw his eyes being questioning and almost like in disbelief. So I said, no, this is true. I said, this is true. And he starts crying. So anyway, so we did massage, and the day after he had to leave. And of course, he gives me the wrong airport. I drive him to the airport, but it's JFK instead of Newark. So it gives us an extra day of getting to know each other a little
Lovely,
bit.
perfect.
While he's able to say, I'm going to be in Nice on the 2nd of January down to the 5th. Will you be in Europe? I'm going to be in Nice until the 4th of January because it's my father's anniversary. And I have to be there. And I have an apartment, which about years ago for the whole family. So you have your bedroom. We're going to be there, and the entire family will be there, and you're welcome with your girlfriend. So I'm meeting him in Nice on the 2nd of January. And he's occupying the small bedroom at the end of the corridor. And
With your girlfriend?
yeah, with Ginger. And we're having this moment of playfulness on the beach, in Nice by the Promenade des Anglais, and just being children. And it was a confirmation that, wow, this is a person that I will never lose. This playfulness, throwing stones, skipping stones, and jumping and taking pictures of stupid stuff. Like really the 7-year-olds that I wish we all are. We all express. And
had anything overtly sexual happened at this point?
Great. So great question. I was guarded. I was not in a position to risk anything in this relationship. Like this would be a friendship of absolute awe.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah.
And I would just go, wow, you exist, man. unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you for being next to me as my friend.
Yeah.
Except that in this long corridor leading to his bedroom, day 2,
In
Nice,
in Nice.
in Nice apartment, day 2, stops me and hugs me.
Hmm.
And I was so touched. I was like, wow, he's seeing me. He's there. He's there. This is not a man that will quiver from his first "I would not lose you." And I was like, wow, what a trustable rock.
Yeah.
And I received this hug, and I continue outside the hallway going to the kitchen, and my mother, who was there, says, "Was that a man that you hugged?" And I said, "That's the only other man who is in the house, like the only man that you don't know." Yes. I didn't even say that. I was like, "Yeah, it was Rasmus." And she goes, "Oh, okay." And it was funny for her to see me hug this man, and it was probably such a hug that she recognized something.
Yeah.
The day after, again in this famous corridor, Rasmus just steps out of his bedroom, which is at the very end, and kisses me. And this time he kisses me. And I'm like...
On the mouth?
Yes. And of course I received this kiss like another confirmation that I am not dreaming. There is so much more there. And his girlfriend is there. They are polyamorous. This is no cheating. This is not a matter of like... but I am... imagine like... Again, from the top of my gap of seniority and wanting to protect this child of heart, I received this kiss as like, the guy is real. Like, boom. There is no gap. There is no boundary for this heart melt situation. And I did not conclude anything. It was just a kiss. But I arrive again in this communal kitchen in my house, and my brother looks at us and goes, "You guys love each other." And I'm looking at Rasmus, I'm like, yes, we do. And Rasmus says, "I guess we do."
Again, I had no sexual intention, or like not consciously about anything. I was just in this open feeling and spirit. So with Michel, I was in loving expression, and I didn't associate hugging or kissing, or still very mentally clear boundaries and all of these things, and at the same time just not wanting to limit myself in any way. You know, if it's not from the heart, I don't need it. I basically have a contract with myself that if I realize that I'm doing something out of fear, as opposed to from my heart, it has to go. It's just a matter of time once I've realized it.
Yeah.
And this has definitely been the case. Like, okay, I see that, okay. And then it overwhelms you. You're not conscious of your fear-based behaviors. And then you're in your heart again. And so dedication to that process. So kissing Michel was just a beautiful surrendered moment of not being self-conscious, not projecting a future or sensuality or anything. It was just like being in that moment and in my heart.
Was it spontaneous?
Yes, definitely spontaneous. One thing, this being a show about coupleship, you know, there's where we're human beings with real lives, and we're not living in a fairy tale. For me, I don't know if you can, I'm sure a lot of people can associate to this actually. I grew up with socially formatted ideas about relationships and like views, and this thing about creating boundaries. You know, this is who I am, and the identification to sexual identity, for example. One of the most challenging things I've done is realize how formatted I was by sexual identity. Like, my attachment to anything my attachment to be a certain way at any moment, I've realized it's just layers of fear. What is my need to identify to something, actually? And I come back to fear, so, wow, now it has to go. First time we were sensuous with each other, we were taking a steam sauna while there was a gong meditation in the house. And we were having conversations, and Michel asked me, how would it feel if I touched you? I was like, no, it's like in an implied way where I understood what he meant. And I was like, no, I'm really comfortable. Thank you, though, for offering. I didn't feel any pressure or anything from his side. And I realized that all my feelings and my taken abackness were coming from me. I mean, we're all the creators of our own emotions, ultimately. And I sat with it for a bit, and I quickly realized, wow, what am I so incredibly afraid of here? And I was like, what do I have to lose so I'm not dying? And I was like, okay, Michel, I turned to him and I'm like, yeah, let's, sure, why not? This started just being there and gentle, and brought me straight to my head, completely self-conscious, super overwhelmed, like most people with an emotional experience, when your mind runs away with you, or like, you just get washed down the river, as I say. We're all crossing rivers in different ways. Sometimes you got your footing, then the emotional, and you're like gone. So that started a journey of like realizing, oh man, all this stuff I really don't need, that's not serving me or anybody. And I'm talking about the layers of fear. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong way of doing anything. It's just like, what am I comfortable with this moment? I'm a different person each single second. Don't want to put an identification on myself. I don't need it. It's where it's gone. I'm basically saying it wasn't like a realization, snap fingers, and Rome was built in a day. I would be back and forth. It's unraveled so much, like an immense amount of stuff that was in my blind spot, and just keep bringing it out. So that's been a journey. The harmony and the peace and the drop of anxiety in my life, and like performance, whatever, all of these different aspects, by imagining and challenging something that's so loaded, sexual identity, like so incredibly, like I think I don't want to say girls have it easier, but there is this thing with men and whatever, and like I was having fears like, will women still like me?
Yes, of course you were.
Am I like, but like, wow, just the questions and things coming up, and realizing, no, I can still be my masculine self and be comfortable. It has nothing to do with any of that. It's just being real in the moment, asking moment by moment what's fine. But that yo-yo was such a journey. Woo. In April that year, we were here in the house where we're sitting right now. We're very close. I was like 2 meters behind from where you are right now. And I was having this immense like moment of clarity. It just stopped as things slowed down, and I felt and I saw, and I just felt the potential with us. And when you see something really clearly, it's almost like you see a possibility in the future and you can touch it. And then I saw everything in front of me between that reality and myself. And I saw all of this stuff that I just wanted to get rid of as fast as possible. And I thought to myself, wow, what is the fastest way I can get?
The stuff to get rid of was all of those cultured, coded blockages.
Everything that's standing between me and the absolute most accelerated spiral of constructive growth, and finding like this. If the world is just rising in complexity, if you walk, I say, my Bible's a forest walk, because it's self-evident to me. Everything is just growing and harmonizing and finding its way, and like it's just, there's no right and wrong. It's just like growing and like finding that harmony. So that's how can I get to this place? And I feeling in the most obvious out of, I've met thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and nobody like Michel. You know, Michel is like standing out in such a way. And I saw this reality of us being together in this spiral and partnership, and like felt that potential and possibility. I just wanted to get there. So I asked myself, what's the fastest way? Or like almost like, don't want to say like stood out in letters in fire in front of me. Not really, but you know, something of the clarity of that. And I was like, what if we got married? You know, what if I jumped in the deep end in the deepest way that I could? And in that moment, I saw that anything that would be between me and not that was just stuff I didn't need or want. So with my commitment to myself, it's like almost like muscle memory. I like jerked out of this standing position, went and found Michel straight up, and went down on one knee. And said, "Hey Michel, do you want to marry me?"
Oh my goodness.
He looks at me and it's almost like he's about to say something, and he just like throws out his hands and he goes, "Yes." It was beautiful.
So it was duh.
The part I didn't tell you about these two is that they live in a massive converted church in Harlem. It is beyond gorgeous. And stepping out the ornate, gilded, double-wide front door of the palace that these two live in and back onto the streets of New York is a bit of a shock. The world outside doesn't seem as magical or as sparkly as it does within Rasmus and Michel's domain. But that's fiction too. It's part of my narrative. Life is magic, and we're all magicians. The lesson that these two have to teach us all, and which they themselves will continually have to relearn in their lives and in their relationship, is that the meaning is ours and ours alone. The quality of this insane choose-your-own-adventure novel that we're all living is up to each of us, and we turn a new page in every second. Thanks for listening, my friends. That is the first episode of Season 2, and I can't tell you how grateful I am that you've listened. Thank you. A big special thanks to the supremely talented David Block of The Human Experience. All of the music in today's episode was produced and recorded by David. He was DJing the white party where Michel and Rasmus met, and it was his music that they were listening to when they first laid eyes on each other. So we thought it would make sense to use his music for their story. Now, if you liked what you heard today, there are two things that you can do to support the show. The first is leave a review on iTunes. It is very helpful when you do that. The second is become a subscriber. It's not cheap to produce this show, and while I've resigned myself to never getting rich from podcasting, I could very much use your support. Now, as a subscriber, you'll have access to bonus content, unedited interviews, early access to some of our episodes, and a community of other listeners. You can find links to all of that on our website, together.show, and you can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at together_show. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/togethershow, and you can always email me at host@together.guide. Don't be shy. I love hearing from you. That's all for today, folks. See you next week.